everyone. Thanks for joining us. We will be allowing people to populate the room, and then we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just a minute as we see people are populated in the room. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started today. Thank you for joining us for the second in our series of webinars. My name is Carrie Diamond, and I am joined by our other NADTC staff, Jane Mahoney. So just a little bit about the webinar today. You are in Zoom. You are all muted. Recording of the session can be accessed after today's event by logging into the online Google form. So I hope everybody has been able to access that. Live captions are being provided by AI Media. They are live. You can click on the CC button, or we have the live stream link that's in the chat. Today, please, throughout the webinar, use the Q&A button to ask questions, or raise your hand will allow you to speak, and you will just have to unmute yourself after that time. And then you can use the chat for any other technical issues that you have. So we are going to start the day with a poll question. So you should see this poll question, and it is related to mobility management and travel training. So I made this live, and the question is, do you fund mobility management or travel training with 5310 funds? The option is mobility management, travel training, both, neither, not sure, or not applicable. And to our captioner, is the link working? We are getting a message that said the viewer link is not working. So if we can maybe get that link again to ensure that I've copied it correctly, that would be great. Thanks, Rebecca. All right, this has calmed down, so I will end the poll and share the results. So out of our group today, and we have 105 attendees, 32% do mobility management funded with 5310, 3% travel training, 26% both. So we have over half on this call that do mobility management with 5310 funds, 20% neither or unsure, and 20% not applicable. So we thought we would just kind of figure out those are some of the other things that can be funded with 5310, and we talked about those last time. So thank you very much, and thank you for those who told us that the live stream link was working. Appreciate it. So again, I want to introduce our speakers. We have Jess Matthew, who is with the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, Lucinda Shannon from the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, and Kristen from the Director of Regional Mobility Programming and Partnership. So we're going to stop sharing at this point. because we are going to start the conversation. So Jane, if you want to go ahead and get started with the first question. If you unmute yourself.
That's a good idea. There we go. So we're going to be talking today about the application process for 5310 and then sustainability. So let's talk about the application process first. And my first question, I'll have Lucinda and Kristen answer, and that is, what was your experience with the 5310 application process?
So I'll go first. The current applicant of the 5310 program asked our organization to take it over and apply in the next year. So the first thing that we did was talk with DRPT and Jess and kind of find out what they intended for the 5310 program and what kinds of areas we could possibly fill for our region. And then we talked, and I kind of already knew, like, there were a lot of agencies that were asking for volunteer driver programs or just saying that they needed more senior transportation. So we also talked with the transit providers and just like a lot of partnership talking before we filled out the application. And the application itself is, I want to say easy, but I don't also, it has questions. So you just kind of answer the questions. It's a lot to put together. For me, budgeting is kind of a new thing for me. So I had to have help with that. And yeah, it took a long time, so we started early and we started talking with people early too.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And now, Kristen, I'd love to hear what your experience was like with the application.
Changed quite a bit over the years. I have been applying for 5310 for about a decade, and that during that time, the state has changed positions as well in the grant administration side of things, and they have been updating the process of applying for grants. So I'd say now it's much more accessible process than it has been in the past. Typically the state is really great about answering questions, or if I get hung up on something like a budgeting question, like Lucinda said, then I can kind of check in with them and ask, their thoughts before I submit, which is really, really helpful. The process of creating the narrative is hard for me because I'm a data nerd and because I like to put a lot of information, and the boxes now are limited to how many characters you can put in. So that's just me. I'm teaching myself to be more concise with the messaging that I'm trying to put through about the grant. And I try to always compile it from the perspective that people may not know what my program is that are reading it. They may have no experience with my location at all. And so I really try to focus on those important details that I would want to explain to someone who's never been to my area or never heard of my program before. So that trying to take it from that perspective is always a challenge, right? To kind of try to set your brain at step one and start from zero. But the process itself, because the state is a willing and kind of accessible partner in this, I have found it to be very easy, as Lucinda said, to submit this versus other grants and federal grants that I've submitted where it's not accessible to talk to the administrator or to the person who's going to be reviewing your grant, for example. So I appreciate that in Virginia.
That's some great advice. And yeah, it's probably different in every state and for all the applicants. So those are two of our subrecipients. So Jess, what about for you? What's your experience with the application process?
Yes, so, and I'm kind of thinking about just a little information about our application process. So our application, it comes around once a year. It's open from December to February 1st. That has been, my understanding, pretty consistent over time. I came on into this position about 2.5 years ago. So as Kristen said, it's iterated over time and we changed grant management programs. So I tried to take input in from the grantees as well on the application to make sure that it's clear, but I have a grant writing background, so technical assistance has always been kind of just important to me personally with grant applications, because I know things can be confusing and a lot of people have to put a lot of work in. But I guess overall, I would say our application process is pretty extensive in terms of the amount of information that we have applicants submit up front. It's I would say very different from transit agencies in the state. Their applications are extremely simple compared to the 5310 application. And that is because it's a competitive application that is not guaranteed funding. So that means we can have new applicants coming in every year as well as returning applicants. So the application kind of has to take into account both of those groups, some who may be really familiar, some who maybe not be. And so one thing we like to focus on in the questions is getting an idea of how well that group will be able to comply with the federal requirements and the state requirements. Not that we expect them to know everything up front, but just kind of getting a sense from the beginning, like, okay, are you kind of set up organizationally to handle this funding? Do you kind of know what it takes to have vehicles and drivers and all the different components of that? And we also ask questions around the coordinated human services plan. So making sure they're aware of that their application ties into that. We ask them to meet with us before the application period opens it's just like a once a year meeting. It's required for the application, but it's really just to make sure they're aware of that plan and how they fit into it. And yeah, I think it's really kind of just sussing out them understanding the requirements. We ask about coordination, and as well as their plans for sustainability, which I know we're going to be talking about. So we ask about local match. It sort of helps us build a picture of, okay, are they really ready for this grant, or maybe they need a little more time and we need to talk to them a little bit more about what it takes. So yeah, there are a lot of questions. And I've tried over my short tenure to sort of hone in on what we really need, because it is obviously a lot of administrative time as well to suss all that out. So it's a balance.
Excellent. So you mentioned that close to the end there about local match, and I'm curious if Lucinda or Kristen would tell us how you guys went about finding your local match.
Yeah, so we're a regional planning district, and the like jurisdictions that are members of our agency provide funding, like it's per capita to our agency. So we asked the commission if we could do this. We were able to use those funds for the match for our program. So it was really nice. Like the TJPDC has been very supportive of the program and me. We got the match through that, but then also I use all the HR and accounting and help with budgeting and all of that too is available to me here. So it's been a really good supportive environment to have this type of a program.
And Kristen? Similar experience, different?
Well, so again, I've been dealing with this program for a while, and when my predecessor was around, I remember her talking all the time about going up and fundraising, going and fundraising the match and talking and having conversations with partners and trying to figure out and leverage resources. And I knew kind of when I took over this position that part of it was not for me. I am not a fundraiser in that sense, where I'm more of a planner. And so I try to plan out where these things will happen. And so when I have a bright idea, like I want to expand my 5310 application and I want to add on a call center, for example, okay, I'm talking about $200,000, and where am I going to get $20,000 in match, or 14,000 or whatever it may be? I'm going to plan out where that can come from, and I'm going to try to leverage and free up expenses that I have coming in from other sources so that I can free up funding that may be available to me for those purposes. So for the commission that we work for, we have town and county dues that come in every year. And so a portion of those dues are designated to this program, but every time I add on and build and try to grow that budget, I also have to kind of correspond to finding more match money. And over the years, I have partnered with foundations and really tried to kind of explain where our transportation programs connect with their same goals or align with their goals. So if we have a goal with a foundation getting people to medical appointments, then I try to pool our data and our information that shows we are really transporting people to those medical appointments. We are connected to health. We're a big component of that. And so then I have those conversations with foundations, and I try to operate outside of typical grant cycles. And I know that that sounds unattainable, but I have found better luck trying to have conversations and build new partnerships with foundations instead of going through traditional grant processes where I'm actually taking away local money that's meant for another purpose for match. So I kind of go around, so to speak, and I meet with these foundations and try to show them that our goals are aligned, show them data, and show that we can create a lot of impact for their investment by providing match funding. And so we've been really, really fortunate in our area to have lots of great support locally for the match, and a lot of support with us as we've grown our budget substantially over the last 5 years. They've been there with us, providing a lot of that match. And we try to secure additional match, so even more than what we're asked for, because we know that a lot of our smaller partners may not have the match available in their budget. So we just try to plan for that as well. So back to the planning side, I'm more of a planner in advance for those funds instead of, somebody out there going and beating the bushes and trying to fundraise at the last minute. That's not me.
I love how you presented two different ways to go about this. It's really great, and you can see people are appreciating that as well. Carrie.
Yeah, two things. So Karen said that their process is changing next year. Mobility management is just going to one recipient in the state, and then they as an organization will be a subrecipient, wondering how that will affect the state matching amount. I guess that's all going to depend on how Michigan does it, but some states don't provide any additional match for their 5310. And so you would just be bound by if it's operational, it'd be 50-50 match. If it were, if it's capital like mobility management, it would be 80-20 match. If the state chips in to reduce that 20%, that would be great, right? Otherwise, I think that would be what locally they'd have to come up with. And Jess, I don't know if I can't recall if you had mentioned this, if the state does have funding that they help with some of the match, or it might not be for this program, but if you had anything to add for that.
Yes, so Virginia is, my understanding, somewhat unique in that we do have state funding that we match, and we have a good amount of course, we always want more for transportation, but we have a Commonwealth Mass Transit Fund that's sort of dedicated funding for transit, and there's a component of that is called state paratransit, which really is what we use for the human services program. And so for operating, we match 40% for vehicles. This year was the first year we actually put state funding on the vehicle awards. It was kind of an experiment because we had state funding that had rolled over from previous years, and we wanted to make sure to use that. And we'd been hearing from grantees about the cost of vehicles going up, and their local match not necessarily going up in the same way. And so yeah, previously it was the 80-20. This year it was a 10% state match. And then for the other capital mobility management, contracted transportation, it's it's what, 16%, and then it's a 4% local match. So yes, we do match state funds on top of that as well.
That's great. And I do recognize that not all states do offer that, but that's advocacy at the state level that can certainly be done. And Catherine had mentioned they use volunteer hours for matching funds, and that would be, I'm assuming, for a volunteer driver program, and those would be in kind matches, which are eligible. You can do in-kind match for 5310 funding. I
Excellent.
think that's all I have in questions right now.
All right. Great conversation. I'm also going to ask a little right now about performance measures, and if any of you would have some advice as you're creating your plans and your projects for writing performance measures. Who
Well,
wants to start?
I'm staring at Kristen because she's has influenced the state performance measures with my predecessor. Kristen, if you want to go, and then I can kind of add on.
Okay.
About that.
Yeah, as part of my kind of soapbox continued here, I stand on a soapbox all the time and I talk about how transportation is more than just putting somebody in a seat. And there's a lot more data to collect as you're providing services that can really be very dynamic for a lot of reasons. And it helps with this metric and this self-improvement that we should just be doing on a regular basis. In Virginia, it's a little unique because we are subrecipients. Typically, the state is not coming back to me and saying, oh, you provided 1,000 rides this year, we need you to provide 2,000 next year. It is really a self-awareness of what's going on in my region, what I'm trying to accomplish at my local level. Am I trying to accomplish more people on the bus? Am I trying to accomplish more people using volunteer transportation? What are more people walking? What am I really trying to accomplish here locally? Because I see this and I see what the trends are, what the problems are. And so I kind of take it upon myself every year to go through a strategic process and look at what we've done, look at our impacts, look at our need areas, and come up with these changing metrics. And I have worked with the state for a long time to try and change the metric collection to be more dynamic, to show that there are so many different types of ways to influence mobility management and to help support these populations. And there's a lot of creative ways that kind of have to be quantitative, even though they are mostly qualitative metrics. And so I really love in Virginia that we have the ability to design those metrics ourselves. And I always give the advice of everyone to collect as much information as you can and then transform that information. It's not, I gave 100 people a ride to the hospital or to a physical therapy office. I gave 100 people 20 hours of physical therapy for 12 months out of the year that resulted in an 80% increase in mobility in this Culpeper area. So there's a lot of ways to transform that data to make it way more descriptive than what we traditionally look at, or the baseline, so to speak. And then I always tell people to be conservative. You're setting your own goals. So there's no need for me to set an unattainable goal for myself. I can set a goal that's realistic for me. And in Virginia, the process is competitive, but it's not competitive to me against my last year. It's competitive to me in my area, what I'm trying to accomplish versus the state's funds. So I don't have to push myself every year to say, I'm going to do 1,000 this year. I'm going to do 2,000 next year. I'm going to do 3,000. The growth doesn't have to be this exponential thing. It can be more qualitative as long as I can translate that information appropriately into the application process. So setting realistic goals is my key advice there.
Excellent. Thank you. Jess, you were gonna
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just wanted to kind of build off that a little bit, coming in to this role, I think, Kristen's probably critique of me is that I don't ask for enough because she has so much. But I think for me, from the state level, the administrative level, I sort of have to balance, what these different size groups can handle, also what we can handle internally in terms of processing that information. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for grantees to use their performance metrics to tell their story. And we require quarterly reporting on performance metrics. And some of that for us is just to show, progress. You're doing something, but it's your own goals. And part of that is just the reality of this type of transportation, it's like, you're not really, it's not a business. You're not like growing your revenue. It's like you're providing a service to people. So, we just want to see what you're doing, how you're doing it, and then be able to, like she said, put that into the application and kind of say, okay, here's what we accomplished and here's what we're planning to do. So yeah, I'm trying to think of advice. I mean, I think one thing that I know changed right before I came on was previously it was more open-ended, the types of metrics that people could submit, and then we sort of standardized it a bit so that we could, again, administratively, it's kind of easier to see a bigger picture when everyone's sort of reporting the same data. So that was just one point that happened to be a change when I came on that I had seen. So
So at that state level, creating 5310 data categories, basically.
Mhm.
And so it is really hard to compare apples to oranges because all of these programs are different. What they're raising their hand to do is completely different. What they're trying to accomplish is vastly different. So the state created this kind of concept of having these data categories where this information from my program that's serving maybe 1,000 people a year to Lucinda's program, who's serving maybe 500 people a year, that data can be comparable because it's within the same category of service. And so that has been really helpful just for us as programs to talk to each other too, to kind of compare impacts and what we're doing as well. But also obviously from the state level, just to be able to get a picture of the impact that's going across the state with that money.
Yeah, I've really found that the people that we're helping are like desperate. They're kind of like the harder customers to serve. So we do have some transit services here, and they do serve a lot more people than we are right now with Path. But the people that we're serving need it so much more. These are people who really need to get to doctor's appointments and other medical services, and they're just not going to be able to do it without very specialized transportation. So it's kind of telling that story, because not only reporting to DRPT, we report to other funders and our commission, a lot of boards and elected officials. And I always try to say, if we didn't help this person, they'd have to move into a nursing home, just to really explain that we're not going for super high numbers. We're really helping the people who need it the most.
Great. Great ideas, great conversation, and I've seen little bits here and there, and some of these ideas and questions can be carried out in our Moodle online forum too. We're going to move on. It's almost 2:30. We're going to move on to the topic of sustainability, but before we do, I think Carrie has another poll she wanted to do.
Yes, so give me just a minute. The poll that we're doing now is, we know there's a lot of programs that just get 5310 funding, but we also know that a lot of states and regions integrate their 5310 with their 5311 funding. That's rural area specific. But that's what this poll is about. Does your program integrate 5310 and 5311 FTA funding? Yes, we integrate both. No, we only get 5310. Not sure and not applicable, we don't get 5310. So we're curious on the 5310 end of things. You either get it, you integrate it, or you don't get 53. So we'll give people a minute to answer that. We have people connecting in the webinar chat, which is great. The other place that you guys can connect is in the forum, posing a question and responding there. So that is great. And I will end the poll and share the results. So out of the programs, 14 programs or 18% integrate 5310 and 5311. 48% of those online only get 5310, so they're not operating as public transit in addition. 13% are unsure, and 21% say it's not applicable. They don't get 5310 funding. So it was just kind of one of those, as people are looking at the services that they're going to provide, getting 5311 fund can influence your reporting and other things that you would need to know about in addition with the 5310 funds that we are talking about today. So that's all I have, and I think we're all caught up on questions as well.
All right, thank you, Carrie. So Jesse already started to mention looking about, as you're looking through the application and making sure the agency has the capacity, and then moving on to sustainability. So looking to just have a discussion from perhaps Lucinda and Kristen first about how are you sustaining your program beyond that initial grant period? Where do you look for your supports, including financial and in-kind? Lucinda, you want to start?
Yeah, so we do get we write grants and get like smaller amounts of funding from the community. I think one of the things, like I had mentioned last week, is I go to a lot of meetings and I talk about PATH. We created a year-end report and distributed that to a lot of potential funders. And so having partners like our transit agencies and the jurisdictions, senior centers, and volunteer driver programs really helps gather community support. And then we also are trying to connect with larger funders in the area, and this is only our second year, so that's going to take some time. We apply for grants from the Community Foundation, and we've received those every year. So knock on wood, that's been really good. And we're continuing to apply and kind of court larger funders, which I think that will be successful in the coming years. It just takes a little while to develop those relationships.
My program is pretty similar to Lucinda's in that we are doing very similar activities for trying to expand and maintain sustainability. Our biggest feature is that we try to leverage everything. So we are having partnerships that go beyond just a traditional partnership, where we are sharing resources. We're looking at what resources they have available beyond just funding, because if I can leverage the use of vehicles or equipment or staffing, that frees up my budget in other ways, and it enables me to use those funds in a different way or reduce that budget overall over time. And I also have a very good community funder who is invested in providing supports for people who are accessing health options. So we collect a lot of information and data to always make sure that we're kind of demonstrating that information. And then we have town and county localities that provide investment. And so we're continuously pulling reports and trying to show impacts that are relevant to those audiences. So we've learned to tailor our data and our information to what these funders and these investors and these stakeholders want to see, what's important to them. Some of them are, really just interested in the bottom line. They just want to know how much it costs and what was the result of that investment. And then some of them really want to know more about that quantitative information. And so we try to share and highlight stories about really unique impacts that come from our work. And so we're just trying to continually build those partnerships to leverage those relationships, the funding, and then also the resources.
So I know, go ahead, Carrie.
I'm sorry, both Lucinda and Kristen, you didn't specifically, you may have in passing mentioned healthcare, but I know that's certainly an area where people try and build those relationships and show that they're getting people to the healthcare appointments, that there's reduced no-shows at the hospital. Have you had inroads there specifically in that healthcare sector in terms of getting buy-in, getting financial or other resources like you talked about, Kristen?
So the Blue Ridge Health Clinic, like our regional health department, came to us when they did their CHIP plan, their community health improvement plan, and said that transportation was their #1 priority for health in our region. And most of it was to medical appointments. And then there was some need for when people were discharged from the hospital, especially if it was like after hours or they lived in a rural area, like getting them home was difficult for clinics. And we have 2 large hospital providers here, UVA Health and Centera. So the Blue Ridge Health District kind of got some numbers from them, and they identified it as a priority. We tried to meet with them, and the Blue Ridge Health District tried to help us set that up. We were not successful. We're still going to keep trying. I think it's just finding the right person there. I think also because they're kind of private organizations, they're focused on income and revenue and not as much on, like community services. Their job is to provide medical support. So we have been able to work with like departments like oncology and kind of do workshops with them on what services are available and how their social workers at the hospitals can connect with transportation for their clients. And they can refer to us too to help out with that. But yeah, we weren't able to kind of meet the right people. The health department did connect us with the Blue Ridge Health Clinic, which is much smaller, and it's in Nelson County. So it just serves like the southern area of Nelson County. And they have been super receptive. We've been talking with them about how we can help them because their clients like need rides to other services as well, and they just can't get them. So we just did a survey with them and we got 300 responses, which is really big for us. And with saying like where people need to go. So we're going to look at that data and talk with them again and hopefully see if we can help out with meeting the needs of those people.
We have a couple of different relationships with some free clinics in our area, and we have partnered on grant applications to try and bring in funding and add transportation as a component of these primarily medical and health grants that are focused on that. And we have helped coordinate the kind of accessibility of the funds that they draw in from these grants through our mobility center. And most of our clients are kind of overlapping. So a lot of the people that we serve through Mobility Center are also being served at these free clinics, and it has worked out really well. We also have some relationships where we leverage some of our staffing to help free clinic individuals navigate their transportation benefits, which was previously work that a nurse at the free clinic was taking away from their time to do that. And we thought that's not a really good use of nurse time. We can do that, and you guys can focus on your medical work. And so that has really borne fruit as far as developing a very valuable relationship with those individuals. In my community, about 5 years ago, I kind of heard through the grapevine that there was a large foundation in our area that had a pot of money, around $200,000, set aside for services for older adults and people with disabilities. And it was health oriented. Their goals were health oriented. And that was one of the examples where I kind of went outside of a normal grant process. I approached that foundation, I put together a proposal, and I asked for some time with them. And I had the audacity to ask for that pot of money. And believe it or not, I was awarded almost the entire pot of money. And since that time have become a regular investment for that foundation, because that money is making a huge impact for the population that they wanted to serve. They didn't have a real clear definition of how they wanted to use that money, what they wanted it to do specifically, but they knew they wanted it to make a better livable community for older adults. And we were able to show that. And we've been able to continue that relationship over time and really extend the investment that they're making and make really great impacts for them to share with their board and their stakeholders. And so that was just something that kind of worked out. And so the advice there is really just to ask. The worst is that they can say no. And typically when people give me a no, I get no's a lot. I go back and instead of trying to convince them and change that no to a yes, I rephrase and reframe what I'm asking for to really eliminate those barriers. What was it that caused that no? What is the reason that I can't have this funding or I can't have this support? And then I go back and I reframe everything and I take a new proposal out to them. Very persistent with that and just trying to push, respectfully on those boundaries that are traditional in our area. And it's resulted in a lot of funding for us.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I would just remind you, there is a discussion string in the forum specific to healthcare partnerships.
Jess has not had a chance to weigh in here on the sustainability, and you have as the direct recipient, the pleasure of reading all of the different ideas. So I suspect that you have read at least as well as seen a lot of different ideas take place with sustainability. So
yeah, so I think the first thing, which I think Lucinda and Kristen both demonstrate it well, is thinking about sustainability before you even apply. I know like this type of grant process can seem daunting in terms of the timeline and kind of getting everything set up. But there is a lot to get out of it if you can kind of set yourself up for success. That's sort of what I advise my grantees, is to really think about those connections. And a big recommendation I have, as they've both stated, is it doesn't work in all types of areas, but thinking about local government support, if we all want that dedicated funding. Some places are successful at getting it. If you can try to start getting in front of your local government, your region, different governing bodies to sort of make your case of your value, but then also like the types of things they talked about, opportunities for partnership with hospitals, employers, Chamber of Commerce, Department of Social Services. I think it is just a lot of building awareness of your services, building relationships. And like, I like the point Kristen was making a lot about, not everyone, or not even you necessarily, can offer money, but resources, someone's job, if you can take away some of the strain of a different job that someone has, I think that's a huge value, and also fulfills the goal of the program of the coordination and collaboration to say, hey, we're, kind of like forming a partnership with this, whatever it is, DSS, who helps us execute this part of it. So yeah, I think that's,
Jess, all three of you, actually, there was a question early on that relates to this topic, and it's, what would you say is your lead time for starting talking with partners before submitting an application? And Lucinda had answered at least 3 months, but do you have any expansion of that in terms of partnership building? And the time it takes, really. And I guess I would also put out there, because this kind of goes with coordination planning, right? Like, you should be planning farther in advance. How far, I don't know if the state has a schedule people have to follow, or if regions do it on their own, but those take time before the application. How much time would you suggest?
yeah.
So-
Go ahead,
oh,
Liz.
So yeah, I had relationships with my like initial founding partners before we had even considered applying for the grant. I was part of a coalition of aging service providers, and that's where I was hearing that they really needed help with transportation. And so me being a part of that committee and the chair of their transportation working group kind of developed a relationship with them, and meeting regularly over a period of probably 3 years before we applied for the grant. So when we did, we needed a partner to run the call center, and the people in that coalition were ready to kind of step up and help out. So it was easy for me to identify partners, and we ran the RFP process and everything, but they applied, a couple of them from that group applied. And then they helped us out a lot because, we were paying them to run the call center, but they spent a lot more staff time, kind of donated in kind to helping the program start up. They worked with us on marketing plans and things like that. So the relationships, really, it does take a long time. Especially, I think, I'm from New England, and it's like more fast paced, but here in Charlottesville, everybody's so friendly and nice. And so it just takes a long time to like meet with people over again. We just met with Seville Village today, and we've been meeting with them over 6 months to talk about helping them with their data collection system. And, every time we just get a little bit closer. And I think that, any type of business relationship, they really need to build trust and understand that you're dependable. So, it just takes time to really develop that. And it's very small steps.
Kristen, do you have anything to add, or just?
I mean, I second what Lucinda said. I have been working with her a lot on her developing, these types of partnerships, and it does take time. In the rural area that we serve, people want to know what are you really after? Seems too good to be true. You're here to help me, and that's kind of what I spend a lot of my time doing, is explaining that this money, we are bringing it into the region to serve a purpose, and we want to have them included in that purpose. We want to play a part in supporting what they are trying to accomplish with transportation and mobility. And we want to see how that can be aligned. And most programs are like, but what do you want from me? And so there's some time spent convincing them that my role, I'm paid to do this. This is what I'm paid to do, is create these solutions. And I don't want anything from you. I want to help you leverage what's around you to accomplish your organization's goals for mobility. And then also, it does take a long time to develop these relationships, and they change over time. So really, if you're starting at step one with trying to get partners on board, you don't have to accomplish steps 1 through 10. You can really start at just step 1, and it will transform over time. Facilitation is my main takeaway there. If you're asking an organization to help you with in-kind match, for example, if I just go to an organization and I say, could you help me with in-kind match? It may die on somebody's desk right there. But if I say, hey, I was looking at your organization and I thought you could provide in-kind match, this is what this would look like, this is how this would happen, and this is how we would report that, and would you mind taking this back to your board? Let's talk about it. Let's set up a next step to have a meeting. I have to facilitate all of this legwork, and that's going to provide a better outcome for me for that partnership versus just kind of sending it cold call kind of and leaving it on somebody's desk.
Great tips. So Jess, from a direct recipient point of view, do you have suggestions for other direct recipients on how you help the people that are applying, the agencies that are applying, with sustainability, like use of fund grading or any other types of resources that might assist people?
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky at the state level. In terms of like, we can't advocate for funding. I mean, we can provide information. We do the coordinated human service plan. I mean, we want people to use as much of our information. Like DRBT as a whole publishes a lot of studies and information that we want people to be able to use to make their case. I think, anytime we see something come through from the FTA, or, we're signed up for various newsletters, we try to make sure to make our grantees aware of like discretionary grants. Obviously those can come and go, but trying to kind of hook people into our networks of, we've got different transit related networks here, groups, conferences. I don't know, just sort of trying to facilitate the connections and opportunities for people to come join in those conversations and meet people that might spark some ideas. And I would say, I was just gonna say at the state level, this year we actually have had the opportunity to work with a legislative committee that's looking at rural medical transportation specifically, to make recommendations for state funds. This happened to come up at a great time when we were working on the coordinated plan at the same time. And so we've been working really closely with that, the manager of that study, to incorporate our recommendations. So that's something, again, it's kind of at the state level. In the way that we look for opportunities to, convince the higher ups maybe to, whether it's increasing that state funding pot that we have or other potential solutions at a state level that we can implement. We definitely try to influences that in the ways that we can. And then, yes, we're definitely aware of federal fund braiding. This is something through the CCAM coordinated access, yeah, and you guys know all about that, but I was recently at a panel where someone was there from NADTC and the other organizations. Her name's Melissa Gray. Anyway, so we were talking to her about maybe someone coming to talk to us more about like giving us technical assistance training about federal fund braiding. So it is, I think we're kind of trying to take everything we learn and then give that technical assistance to our grantees to make sure they're aware of all the different options. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking of about right now.
Yeah, in Virginia, 5310, you have to apply about 8 months ahead of time before you're going to be awarded the fund. So it is a lot of lead time. There's a lot of time, after that 8 months, after you submit, during that 8 month waiting period, yes, there's a lot of time to talk and meet with people, but you may come up with great ideas and new projects that you want to fund, but you really have to wait till the next funding cycle. So trying to look at potential partners, their budget cycles, they never happen to align with mine. So looking at, is your budget flipping in the summer? Is it flipping in the winter? And then trying to get kind of on their radar so that they have a good amount of time to follow their internal processes, to communicate and potentially talk about allocating funding for in-match or match or in-kind.
Great, thank you. So Bobby had her hand up. Bobby, can you just let us know where you're from before you start talking or asking your question, please?
Sure. I'm Bobby Hegna. I work for the Center for Independent Living of Western Wisconsin, which now is called Compass IL, and I'm the Director of Transportation. And I kind of wanted to add something to Kristen's. It is a lot of work to go out and, collaborate with everybody and do all of that and get your letters of support. Took me a long time, but I had to do it for 42 counties. So I attend 41 planning meetings. I attend that, but after you do that, life is much simpler because now we all attend TCC meetings and we cross paths all the time. And so then I just send out a letter. It's just short and sweet. It's that time again. That's all I say. And everybody starts sending everybody letters of support. I send to them, they send to me. Some of them I just send a sample and they sign and send it back on their letterhead. But it helps so much for the 5310 grant. I will probably send in, right now, I probably have 15 letters that I'll send with it. But it's so much, it takes a lot of work, but it's so worth it in the end. And a lot of traveling. But for us, because we're a rural area, so it's a lot of travel. Sometimes I travel 4 hours for an hour meeting and then 4 hours back because it's all rural area. Yeah. And there's some areas I don't even want to drive in after the summer's over. I don't go up there anymore because you could get stuck, no cars, and in the snow. But the letters of support and just working with other people, it's great. Even for our state funding, I work with people and do MOUs. That really helps them and it helps us. So we're all helping each other to meet the same goal. So
That's a really good example of laying a foundation that's going to serve you through
Yes.
multiple years.
yes,
Because once
it
you
does.
establish that relationship, like you said, then you just send them an email and you remind them, hey, I really need your letter of support this year. And so you have that relationship that's continued year after year after year. So I think a lot of grantees think about, okay, I just need it for right now. I just need it this one time, but it really
Yeah.
is something that can last from year to year.
Yep. The only time I have to fully write the whole thing is when directors retire and a new person takes over, they're not sure. So then you just send the letter from last year and they add their touch, and then you have your matches in there and all of that. Makes life so much simpler.
Thank you, Bobby, for sharing. And for those of you who are listening to this going, oh my gosh, I don't have any of it. It's so overwhelming. Where do I even start? Just start with the first contact.
Yeah.
That's gets it all going, and then you can build from there. So it's really just like take one baby step at a time. Right?
Yeah, and reaching out to somebody else who has gotten the funding is a really great way just to share your application, share what you've written, share what you asked for, how you asked for it, why. It gives you a great leg up to start on instead of starting at point zero.
Lots of themes. Patience is one. Starting slow. Community partners, so important. You guys have presented so much good information. Are there any other questions that have gone unanswered, or does anyone else want to ask a question or comment?
I don't have any other ones that I have. I see, Jane, you put the federal funding guide, CPM federal funding guide in the chat. So if people are interested in that, otherwise, would you like me to bring up the last bit of the PowerPoint?
And I'm also I hope you all have our website, but there's our NADTC website. We have a lot of information. We just released a new webpage that is the 5310 Resource Hub, where we've kind of put together all of the 5310 related resources that NADTC has kind of in one place. Also links to FTA page, the CPAM page, the National RTAP page, just to try that if you've had 5310 funding for a while, just want some information, or you're just starting, it's a great place to check that out. And thank you, Carrie, put the actual link to that hub in there. So I really want to encourage you all to keep this conversation going by joining the online forum. We'll put the link for that in the chat. Your login is your email address, all lowercase, and you should have made a password. And if you've forgotten, you can do the forgot password. But read through the threads. We have quite a few. You can go forward, Carrie. Quite a few conversations happening in different topics, and I put them on here in case one of them piques your interest. One of the questions was, what would you like to see changed in how 5310 money is used? There's a thread about software as a service and what are you using? Also a thread on 53 applications and platforms. Someone wondering, what is your application process? Also, as Carrie mentioned earlier, one about healthcare and partnerships and how to build those relationships with healthcare agencies. Mobility as a service is a topic. And here's one of my favorites was first time 5310 agencies, some tricks and tips if you're just starting out. One more slide with a few more. Someone asked, what projects do you use your 5310 for? And I've seen in the chat some people like, how do we not just buy vehicles? So great topic there. Also, some great information on mileage reimbursement programs for people to use their own drivers. Trip planning and dispatching tools, people sharing ideas on that, as well as someone asked, how are you recruiting paid or volunteer drivers needing, what are some suggestions? And then back to kind of a really constant theme throughout these two webinars is valuable partners. And who are your valuable partners? And we probably all have a partner that might be just a little unique, that if you share it, might give someone an idea of someone new to reach out to. So that is all we have time for today. I really, really want to thank our panelists. You've done a fantastic job of sharing your great programs and great information. And just so you all know, they are participating in that online forum, so you can connect with them there as well as other attendees. So that is what we have for today, and thank you all for joining us.
And the webinar survey is in the link in the chat. If you can please complete that, let us know how we can improve.
Thank you all.
Thank you.